Good evening. This is a meeting of the Wilmette Plan Commission. Mr. Adler, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Greeno.
Here.
Ms. Gamey.
Present.
Mr. Head. Mr. Schwab.
Here.
Mr. Shepherd.
Present.
Mr. Taylor.
Here.
Chairman Bradford.
Here. This meeting is being conducted remotely via Microsoft Teams. For those watching this video in the future, the state of Illinois is currently under a stay-at-home order issued by Governor J.B. Pritzker due to the coronavirus global pandemic. As a result, all in-person governmental meetings have been canceled. However, the Open Meetings Act now permits electronic meetings of governmental bodies like the Plan Commission. And this evening, we are conducting our business in compliance with state law. This meeting is being broadcast live on our local cable access channel 6. It is also broadcast on the internet on YouTube live, and the URL for that is www.youtube.com/user/Village of Wilmette/live. To participate in the meeting, you can join through Microsoft's Teams. Visit the Village website at www.wilmette.com and find the calendar event for the Plan Commission meeting. There is a link for you to join the meeting. You will also be able to find the meeting agenda and case reports under the calendar. Alternatively, you can view the meeting on Channel 6 or on YouTube and call into the meeting, allowing you to listen and speak using your telephone. The phone number is area code 872-239-8225. Tonight's meeting access code is 848-742-280#. You may also submit your comments through YouTube Live. A member of the village staff will read your comments to the Plan Commission. All comments to the Plan Commission will be recorded in the meeting minutes as we typically do. For our meeting guests joining by Teams, when you are not speaking, please keep your device muted to minimize disruption of the proceedings and your video turned off so the commission members can be seen. Well, that was interesting. We're going through and looking at the agenda. Mr. Adler, from what I understand, is we're not approving any meeting minutes tonight.
No, I would just remind the commission or point out that I did send out the draft of the case minutes for the two cases that you heard on the 17th.
Yes.
So if you have any questions or comments, if you could get back to me by 9 o'clock on Thursday, that would be great. The annexation rezoning for 57 Indian Hill is actually being tabled till January. So if you take a look at those and you need a little bit more time, feel free to take a little bit more time on those.
Okay, thank you. So the item on the agenda for this evening, we don't have any cases to hear, but it's a discussion of the comprehensive plan process. So, Mr. Adler, if you want to start with the discussion.
Sure, and thank you for the comments and questions that came in over the last week and a half or since the last meeting. There was an updated version that was sent out probably a half an hour before the meeting that contained some suggested changes by Commissioner DeGreeno, and so hopefully you have that. And I would ask, if possible, if we could work off of that that draft. Just really quickly, probably the besides wordsmithing and changing around and actually really appreciate that. Definitely made it easier to read and I definitely a better project objective. But one of the things that came up is we originally had social equity in there, and one of the suggestions is that we, instead of referring to social equity, we refer to community diversity. And so, that's one of the things I would want the commission to talk about. I'm pretty confident one of the goals of the Plan Commission is to make Wilmette more open and inviting community. Our land use policies actually hinder us being an open and inclusive community. Obviously, we want to take a look at those policies. So, with that, I would, ask for comments on the revised draft. If you need a minute to take a look at that, I think that should be fine also.
No, I had a chance to go through and I think all of the suggestions are good. It's helping to fine tune the language. John, I was pleased to see in the evaluation criteria an inclusion of the diversity of the project team.
Mm-hmm.
And one very, very minor housekeeping matter. If you could put a revision date on each one of these that comes out, so we can sort of track whether it's the current
Yes.
version or not.
Yes, I apologize.
Do you have a time, Mr. Adler? I'm sorry. Do you have a timeline for when you'd like to get this issued?
Yeah, I think our goal would be end of this year, beginning of next year. I think I might have mentioned at the last meeting that I'm going to be asked to provide an update where we're at with this to the village board. That update will be on December 8th. I would love to be able to tell them that as it relates to the project objective and scope of services, that the Plan Commission looked at it and was happy with it, and then we'll work both with our procurement officer to get it in the proper form to release it. We will also be asking the village board to take a look at it and provide comments also. So again, if there's a level of comfort at the end of tonight's meeting, whereby either we've got a draft that we feel comfortable with, that I could share with the village board, or if there's changes, if it's okay if I make those changes and share it with Chair Bradford, to try to get a draft to the village board sooner than later, that would be great. If not, that's fine too. If you feel that you need another meeting to look at it, that's fine also.
Mr. Adler, I have a question, and this could be just because, I'm not familiar with putting this kind of plan together. The deliverables, usually what I'm used to is they're very succinct. They say, this is what we need at this stage, like 25%, 30%, and into the process, this is what we want to see. What we have here is pretty broad, and maybe that's how it is handled. I'm having a hard time.
Yeah, we could make that more detailed, and quite honestly, some of this stuff at the end was less important. It's important, but what was more important to me at this point was to try to make sure the project objective and the scope of services really was where we need them. And if the commission thinks we should provide more detail in the deliverables, we surely could do that.
Well, maybe that's where I'm having trouble connecting, because to me, deliverables are very much connected to the scope. And the scope, at least the way I look at it, for me is pretty broad. I'm not sure. It could be because I don't do plan, I haven't done plan reviews. So if you're putting this RFP in front of different consultants, we ought to be able to compare what they're providing. And I just don't know if maybe other people are familiar with it. I don't know if I can look at a scope like this with these deliverables and be able to compare. That's what I'm saying.
And Commissioner Gray, maybe the suggestion might be asking the consultant to provide both a schedule and a list of deliverables at certain points within the schedule.
Okay.
Well, there's
So
the
that's
submission,
fleshing out.
there's the submission requirements at the end of that. And I think that does ask for some of that information, that what we're asking them to submit as a part of the response.
Okay.
On pages 6 and 7.
Yes, you just do indicate a schedule. Tab number 6.
Okay.
And
then
and
tab number 2 is a statement of project deliverables. So I think you've got that covered.
I think those submission requirements were added as we went, and I think those were really good additions. I think that was Chairman Bradford's idea to get those in there, and really helps when we get to evaluating the RFPs in the future.
Yes.
I think that's going to be very helpful.
And John, I appreciate the way it's been organized, because at least it gives whoever is evaluating these a consistent benchmark to look at, the various different proposals.
right, and and thank you for suggesting that. So
Okay. Thank you.
Two small things I would probably want to see in the final RFP. One is, obviously this is a long-term plan, but we're going to be executing at least the planning of it during COVID, maybe just making sure we ask how that'll impact the project, unless it's in here and I missed it. But making sure we discuss that aspect of the project, as well as something I talked a bit with John Adler about, is just some questions about pitfalls that have happened as they've gone through other processes, to understand and learn from even the submissions we don't end up utilizing, understanding how these processes go awry, how they go well, and maybe using some questions there to suss that out for our own education and education of others working on the plan.
on that second part, do you think it would be, because as we discussed, I really like that idea, and especially because related to your first suggestion, the pandemic, there's going to be pitfalls and things as it relates to community engagement that we haven't even thought about. We might be getting lucky. If this really kicks off in June, we might be pretty fortunate. But I like that idea about the question. But is that a question that you think we could ask the consultants that we've asked to come in for an interview to answer? Instead of asking for everybody who's going to be responding to the the RFP. If we want to add something like that under community engagement, we do say, while robust public engagement is always important when preparing a comprehensive plan, beginning the rewrite process during the pandemic provides additional hurdles to engagement. We could extend that, consultants should identify, pitfalls or hurdles that, related to, specifically what we're, what they've been dealing with, because I would assume that this has not stopped them from doing plans and work of these consultants.
No, I would think that everybody at this point knows how to work remotely
Yeah,
and spend way too much time on Zoom meetings. But I think that that is a good follow-up question during the interview process is, how would you structure organizing, community engagement? And the other thing, Mr. Adler, that I would recommend is that, not for the purpose of the RFP, but excuse me, for us moving forward, if the village could put together some suggested focus groups or key stakeholders, so that we make certain that in addition to the general public, there are other members of the community that we want to get input from.
good point.
And that way we can figure out how to and when to, excuse me, engage them in the whole discussion process.
Yes.
Other thoughts and comments?
In the section where I guess this would be page 3, the bullet point, community diversity, I would suggest that it read community diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, that's good.
Other comments?
I do have a question, and I think I know the answer. As I mentioned at the last meeting, the process of selecting the consultant hasn't been decided yet, but am I right to assume that the Plan Commission would like to be a part of that, be involved in that selection, especially if you're the ones who are going to be sort of managing with staff and the consultant this process?
Yeah, I'd like to hear from my other commissioners before I comment.
Yeah, I would.
Yes.
Yeah, agree.
I'm gonna have to ask a question. To ask you a question. I guess it all depends on how many commissions are going to be involved. If it's just the Plan Commission, yes, all of us. Otherwise, you don't want to have
Right.
a lot of voices.
Right. That's a good point. And again, we haven't decided. It could be that there's the Plan Commission and you have the chairs of a couple of other commissions. But what I would like to do, if it's something that the Plan Commission's ready, willing, and able and desires to do, I would at least want to let the village board know that would be very receptive to being a part of that group.
Well, we are the Plan Commission.
Yes.
And I think I've heard from my other commissioners here is that, yes, everybody is interested.
Yep.
Understanding that a selection committee that gets too large is unwieldy.
Yeah.
So it may be, 1 or 2, maybe 3 representatives from the Plan Commission, and we can decide who's appropriate for to do that.
That
Once
sounds
you
good.
decide, once you decide who else needs to be part of the selection committee.
Good. Thank you.
So, please feel free to communicate that to the village board.
Great.
We stand ready to serve.
Well, if there isn't anything else, obviously there's the one change to add inclusion. I think we decided, the pitfall could be a question that we ask. So does it sound like we're pretty good to move forward?
I'm good to go.
Great.
One
Excellent.
recommendation, Mr. Adler, I would make is that once we end up shortlisting, what the university typically does is when we invite firms to come in for interviews, we give them a list of interview questions. And between now and whenever we're planning on shortlisting, you may want to collect ideas in terms of the sorts of things that we ought to ask during interviews.
That's a great point. And I would ask if you want to email, if you've got questions you definitely think should be asked, please feel free to email them to me and I'll compile them.
Okay. Our approach has been, we're interviewing you because we know you're qualified. So let's not go back and revisit the qualifications. Let's talk about how we're going to work together.
Sounds good. Well, I, for one, am very excited to know that we'll be kicking this off relatively soon.
Yeah, this is an important step.
Yep.
So is there any other business to come before us this evening?
Except for asking for public comment, I have no new business.
Is there any public comment? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Sorry, who was the first? Who moved?
It might have been me, Michael.
Okay, thank you.
And a second?
I'll second.
Although, Mr. Adler, would you call the roll, please? Sorry.
Mr. Greeno,
Yes.
Ms. Gamey,
Yes.
Mr. Head, Mr. Head?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab,
Yes.
Mr. Shepherd,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
and Chairman Bradford.
Chair votes aye. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for your time and service.